I posted it on LinkedIn with an opening line that I hadn't really thought about. It got 2.5 million impressions, 1,000 comments and 4,000 likes. I never would have thought that people would have cared so much, but actually, they really do.
Did that change everything?
Yeah, it was beyond my wildest dreams. It completely supercharged my business. I think I ended up having about 40 conversations in 2 weeks. I pitched it to Christo, who has about 3.5 million followers. We did the podcast. It's had 20,000 views. I was just really shocked at how far it went.
Please give me the framework.
You do exactly what we spoke about. It's not about writing, 3 times a week. What you have to do is, this is what moved the needle. There's no pushback. This stuff works. I personally saw the results. So when I started my company, I didn't really invest into my personal brand. But when it came to LinkedIn, which I actually got when I was 18, I wasn't that strategic. If I was speaking somewhere, I wrote about it. And if I had a new case study about a client, I wrote about it. But there was no thought leadership. I don't think many people use thought leadership around that, when it was starting out. But then something shifted. And so when I first started writing, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to commit to these 3 content pillars. And I'm going to make sure that I'm writing regular content about these pillars that I've committed to. And it worked, and investing in my personal brand really paid off. And I personally saw the results.
How did you came up with those 3 pillars? How did you know what they are?
I looked through my DMs and I saw the questions that kept coming up. So one was about motherhood. How do you balance motherhood and business? And I thought, and actually, I arranged an event in Tel Aviv for this with a friend of mine, and 70 women came and it sold out in the first, 3 days. And I knew there was a demand for that, for balancing unapologetic mothering, how to balance business and, the juggle basically and family. And I thought, super interesting. I could see there's demand for it. I'm not going to monetize it, but I am going to speak about it. And actually, one of my most successful posts was writing about what my day-to-day looks like. And I think it got 40,000 impressions. LinkedIn themselves picked up on it. And they were like, this is so amazing to see a woman talking about how she really manages the juggle. And people still reach out being like, I saw that post. It made me really see how to do it. And I also spoke about non-negotiables. I don't take calls from 4 to 7, all these things that make it work. And then the other thing I realized people were coming to me about was what does it mean to be a small business owner? How do you make sure that you get a certain amount of money up front? When do you bring on a lawyer? Do I need a lawyer from the beginning for my proposals and my contracts, or does it not really matter? How much should I be spending on design? All these kind of things, or how much would a small business should be spending on branding agency? And I just thought, I'm going to talk about that, what it really means to be a small business owner, how to run your own company, how to scale a team, how to hire freelancers. And that was something that I began to monetize in one-to-ones. So, book me for a one-to-one and we can discuss anything that you're facing with your business right now, be it you want to run a course and you don't know how to charge, be it there are too many people signed up, you don't know what to do about it, or there haven't been enough people to sign up for the course. Should I still do it? So that became a real kind of revenue kind of system as well. And so I wrote about it because I knew people really needed the help. And then the third thing was branding and, really what it means to build a brand.
If you're ready to take your business to the next level, don't miss out on my free burnout-free business guide. It's a simple 7-day plan to help you reset your relationship with your business, improve your mindset, and achieve more while staying balanced. You can download it right now by using the link in the description. So how do you show founders that done right branding actually simplifies their lives, like you said before, rather than complicates it?
So I think I just share with them my inbox on LinkedIn and I show them the leads that happen and the opportunities that I'm put forward for, and maintaining consistency if you don't have something of value to say. It's sitting there and saying, who am I trying to attract? Just like when we come up with those 3 content pillars and we say, okay, this is the target audience of who I'm trying to attract. Okay. How can they read the post and connect? So A, there's a topic, but B, there's getting super specific. So if I'm looking, for my next client for the next quarter, what do? I write about a past client. So I say, Rob came to me at age 50, looking to retire in 10 years. And when we were looking to define success, he said that he wanted to retire with the most amount of money he's ever had in 10 years' time. And I said, let's get there. That person who is now 50 years old and thinking, I want to make the most amount of money in the next 10 years possible. I'm going to do this through my personal brand and I want more speaking opportunities. I want to sit on boards. I want to do amazing things, and I'm now telling you that that's the kind of client I work with. Oh, she's speaking to someone like me. So I think what you have to do is work backwards. is write the post with the ideal client in mind. Or, just spoke at that conference. Why are you doing that? Because you want someone else to see that they should invite you to speak at their conference. So it's just being super strategic without being salesy. So if terms of like someone giving me pushback, like there's no pushback. This stuff works. Look at the opportunities that have come. Look at the deals I've signed. I'm happy to give all the details when I have those sort of meetings and give those presentations. Obviously not who it was with, but a typical profile and for how much. And then there's no question. It's worth it. It's worth the investment because it works, but it takes time. If I started doing this in October 2023, let's say, it really took, I would say, 8 months for me to see a result.
That's not such a long time for building a brand, to be honest.
It's not such a long time. And I think that as understanding, that was my timeline, and I've seen different timeline with clients, but it works when it's done right. Give it a try. The worst that can happen is that you give it a few months and you say, do you know what? This isn't for me. But if you don't try, like the answer will always, always be no. And I think on a practical level, like an example that I had was I had this experience, I think around, I want to say April time, where I booked a consult for myself. I'd never really booked a consult before. And I had this consultation with someone, and it was just a hot mess of a consult. They cancelled a few minutes before. It was at a really high price point. And then they asked in advance for my website, and then they didn't actually look at my website. And it was just whatever, a lot. And I just didn't do anything with it, and it bothered me. And I just thought, how interesting is this? Okay, I had a bad consult, and what? It happens, I'm sure, to a lot of people, whatever. And it just kind of sat there, taking up its little bit of brain space. And a few months later, I just told someone the story, and they were like, wow, like that's really interesting. And I was like, is it? Okay. And I wrote it down and I posted it on LinkedIn, with a great opening line that I hadn't really thought about. And it just said, I paid $250 for a 15-minute consult. And I went into the story of what happened. And it got 2.5 million impressions. And I think that, like, again, it goes back to understanding that, like, when you're ready to share, you'll know you're ready and it won't feel uncomfortable. Like, I didn't really care what happened with the post. And I still, to this day, there's a lot of insights as to why I think it actually did connect with so many people. But that level of virality, no, I wasn't expecting it. And it wasn't what I needed from the post. But I think it's understanding that when it's the right time to share something, you will feel that it's the right time. But you won't have that instinct unless you start sharing. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. If you're never sharing, then nothing will ever feel interesting. But if you're always sharing and you're always looking for something interesting, then suddenly everything will feel relevant to share.
Interesting. Was that a tipping point for you, that post? Did that change everything?
Yeah, it completely supercharged my business. I think that it just brought so many new eyeballs to me, to my story. People like went back and wanted to read other stuff I'd written. So many people reached out just saying, like, how can I help you? Which I was so surprised about. And it led to so many different introductions of people that, needed their own personal brands and wanted to know more about my process. And I was just really shocked at kind of like how far it went and, how many more people started to really know about me and my offering. And I also got a lot of pushback at the time from people saying, viral posts don't work. And I think that it was a subject that I offer consults. So people were like, oh, well, I'm sure, my last line of the post was, I really did learn something. I learned exactly how not to lead my own consults. So people are thinking, oh, she had such a bad experience. I'd love to see what her consults look like. And I think it was just like such a kind of train reaction of 1,000 comments and 4,000 likes and just so many conversations and new people to speak to. I think I ended up having about 40 conversations in 2 weeks. And then I pitched the story. I just thought, I listened to a lot of podcasts. I would love to pitch this to, one person who I really rate. And I pitched it to Christo, who has about 3.5 million followers. And he was like, okay, this is a really interesting story. I just sent him a snapshot of the impressions, and I sent him that from Instagram, where I have 500 followers. So it wasn't like I was a someone. And he was like, this is really interesting. And we did the podcast. It's had 20,000 views. I get new leads from it probably every month. I get someone messaging me about it probably, at least a few times a week. And so, yeah, that one post of $250 really did do a huge amount. I also got the CEO of the platform where the person did the consult. They reached out personally, gave me a whole call, refunded the money, asked me to join the platform as a consultant. Like, it was beyond my wildest dreams. So when it works, it really works.
Were you ready for it?
Yeah, I was. And actually, like a lot of the things I wrote about afterwards was, it's not about the viral post. It's about making sure that when the viral post happens, your brand is ready.
Please give me the framework of how to get ready for this.
You do exactly what we spoke about: the strategy, the visual identity, the verbal identity. There's no secrets. So what it means is, let's say they searched my name afterwards, the same thing was coming up. Avatar Always Girls, personal branding expert. There was no inconsistency. It wasn't like, just someone with 200 followers. And then when they went to Google the person, there was nothing else. And my LinkedIn banner was very visual and it matched my website colors. And if you looked up any presentations I'd give, you would see it was the same sort of branding. And so all of these things create an immense amount of trust. Ultimately, I probably, I had, I don't know how many thousand followers at the time, but you have mutual connections. So you can say, oh, I just saw this post from Avatar. I see you know her. How do you know her? What's she like? Is there anything that I should be going to for her for help? So I think that, when we talk about what it really means to set yourself up for a viral post, it means to set yourself up for success, to know when all those DMs come in, what's worth your time? What are you actually wanting to get from the conversation? When they say, what is it that you offer? You know what you offer. Otherwise, you have a viral post and nothing for anyone to do with it. They can't book a one-on-one. They can't book you for branding. They can't book you for speaking. So what? So then that's the end of the conversation. I loved your post. So I think it's making sure that you know what you have to offer the world and making sure that that's very clear from the moment they kind of click on your LinkedIn page.
It's almost, it didn't happen out of luck. Looks like it happened because you were ready.
I don't know the reason why it happened, but it was a very kind of instrumental moment for me.
It brings me straight to the next question. Another doubt people often wrestle with is, what if I'm just not special enough? How do you help someone see that their story still matters?
You don't know what people will connect to. Just last night, for example, as well, I'm updating my LinkedIn banner at the moment. And I was like, okay, I think this is kind of interesting. I'd love to get more business for the woman that's helping with the banner. And maybe people will have an opinion. So I uploaded it and I just said, these are the 3 banners that I'm choosing from right now. This is the person I'm using. A, you should use her. And B, I would love to know what you think. And people just like jumped on the bandwagon. Like, this is my opinion. This is what I think. This is why I don't like this. This is why this works. And I just think like, I never would have thought that this would have resonated with people, that people would have cared so much. It's not their business, but actually like they really do. And so I think like when you overthink and you try and analyze, oh, what's working? Why aren't people interested in this too much? It kind of makes you lose that human aspect and ability to just take a risk and think, okay, worst comes to worst, it's not going to do great, and I'll delete the post. And what?
So keep an open mind about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you have a principle that really resonated with me, was just essence before visibility. Can you unpack that? What that actually means and why so many founders get it backwards?
So I think that building your essence and knowing your no's in order to kind of be able to know your yeses takes a lot of time. Takes a lot of time in being in an uncomfortable situation. So before, I started building a personal brand on LinkedIn, I had 7 years of business experience behind me. So how did I get good at public speaking? Yes, I probably was always a relatively good public speaker, but I did a ton of public speaking for free, mainly to college students. So I think that we don't understand, or how, did my LinkedIn posts get so good? Like, I spent a lot of time writing them, or I spent a lot of time writing and perfecting over time before I was even thinking about LinkedIn, be it my emails, be it my website content. And I think that everything that we do, the more time we give to it, the better we become. So really, when it came to like actually going out on LinkedIn, I had so many stories already prepared. I had all these things that happened to me in the 7 years of running a business, of, a client not really giving me a deposit and then losing the money. Or flying to America to work with a client and they used the presentation that I did and didn't actually pay me for it. Like, I went through a lot of failure in order to kind of see the success. And I think I was very honest about that. And I think the hard thing about being a founder of a company is that, you're put in the limelight straight away. And it's meant to just be so successful. It's meant to just be, we raised this round of money and this is what worked and everything's been going great. And I think the really interesting stories are the bits where they're like, and then this happened and we had to pivot. And this is what we learned here. And, when you actually kind of express what's going wrong. And so I think that like as a business owner, for me, I was really lucky that I wasn't starting my business and starting my personal brand at the same time. But if I was, I would just be transparent. Not too transparent. You don't want your clients to think, oh, is this person still trustworthy to do business with? Do they really know what they're talking about? But transparent enough that you feel human, that it feels like this person isn't always winning. So even with the Christo podcast, for example, I was posting a lot of when I initially went live, I had a ton of messages in my inbox saying, wow, this is amazing. And I would share it. What people said, like, I only started to watch this for 2 minutes and I couldn't stop watching. And there I was 51 minutes later, yada, yada, right?
That was my experience.
And I was like, you know what? There's also a lot of comments in here which aren't so nice. Why don't I share them? Why don't I share the comments that said, wow, this girl is super privileged. She grew up with really, from a very privileged background. So obviously, she got on the podcast. Maybe she even paid her way there. All this stuff that, I was very privileged and I had a ton of opportunities, but I've seen many, many, many people with many opportunities and not make the most of them. So, okay, but I posted them. It's not all rosy. When you put yourself out there, you have to understand there's going to be a lot of, for all the positive feedback, you're going to get negative feedback as well. Exactly like you said about building a personal brand. Not everyone's going to love it. Some people are going to be like, this is so cringe. This is so uncomfortable. But if the right amount of people are loving it, then it's working. If everyone's loving what you're doing, you're not doing anything because you're pleasing everyone is pleasing no one. So I think it's just remembering that you don't have to be doing that all the time. It's okay to just not be doing it for everyone and for not everyone to resonate with your message. And that's also part of building a business, understanding that not everyone's going to love the way that you're doing it. Not everyone's going to want to work for you. Not everyone's going to think that you're the best leader. It's all the same thing. It's taking risks and knowing that in life, not everything you do is going to resonate with everyone.
One viral post, 2.5 million impressions. You've seen what happens after a brand clicks. But what if right now the way you're being perceived is nothing like who you really are? If you haven't yet watched the first part of the conversation with Avital, where we talked about how to control how you're being perceived on the outside, go check it out now. Or get the full uncut conversation. It's live now. And it's got everything you need to know about how to build and how to scale your personal brand to not just get noticed, but to actually convert. I hope you enjoy it. And if you have, I hope you'll share it with someone who needs it also. Thank you.